So coffee is the world's second most consumed beverage after water, and it's so important to so many people like myself who require the caffeine, which is a chemical compound, to boost our alertness in the morning. And coffee has a really special place in my heart because my first job was actually starting a cafe and also started a coffee cart business. And something about coffee made me realize that the ecosystem around coffee, like coffee shops and cafes, are really a place where community and people connect together. And there's a saying that more deals are made in a cafe than in a boardroom. Coffee has a unique and strategic benefit to small-scale farmers. Because it can be grown in hilly areas, conventional agriculture requires crops to be grown on flat ground, but many farmers live on hilly areas in places like Nepal, where they don't have access to flat land. And so coffee can be grown in these areas without much intervention, without much machinery or equipment. And it can be grown in forests as well, which actually helps to conserve the environment and preserve the forested areas. So this is good for income and building livelihoods for these small-scale farmers. In 2024, I attended a coffee and climate change conference in Sabah, and that's where I got to know about the damaging effects that climate change is having on coffee. But I also learned about some of the potential opportunities in this area, and that's what I'll be sharing in this video. So here's the context. Demand for coffee is at an all-time high. 2025's demand for coffee is set to be 3% higher than 2024. People are drinking coffee at an even younger age, right? Gen Zs and millennials are starting to drink coffee as young as 15 years old because they find that it is part of a lifestyle that they resonate with. People are willing to pay a premium price for coffee as well, and there's a rise in specialty coffee or boutique coffee shops. Yet with this increasing coffee demand, the coffee supply is actually going to be decreasing because of climate change. The two major producers, Brazil and Vietnam, are already feeling this. One report states that Arabica coffee, which is the main variety of coffee, is expected to be hit by 45%, and Robusta is expected to be hit 23% globally. And generally, there's an overall understanding that by 2050, 50 to 80% of all coffee production is going to be affected negatively. Now, what is climate change going to do? Especially in coffee growing regions that tend to be on the higher altitudes, these areas are going to be warmer. Now, Arabica coffee, which accounts for more than half of the world's coffee supply and production, is usually grown in altitudes between 2,500 feet to 6,000 feet, or 700 meters to 1.8 kilometers above sea levels. Now, this cooler temperatures in these higher elevations gives Arabica coffee that nuanced, floral, fruity notes, right? But with climate change, this temperature is expected to increase by a few degrees Celsius, and the plants do not like that. So they're going to struggle, they're going to get more diseases like rust, they're going to attract more pests like the coffee borer beetle, and ultimately, this is not a sustainable way for them to grow. Farmers are going to have to spend more money on pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and ultimately, it's going to reach a point where the plants just can't grow. Robusta coffee, which requires a slightly warmer temperature, between 22 to 28 degrees, isn't going to be spared from this as well. Now, what's going to be the impact? For farmers, this means a loss of production, which means a loss of income, and potentially a loss of an entire livelihood. Some farmers actually live off growing coffee. And in many areas, like I said, like in small scale, hilly areas that are very obscure, where this is one of the main cash crops that can be grown to produce an income that is worthwhile and meaningful, this is going to be a big problem for them. And for consumers like you and I, costs are going to be exponentially higher. There's a report in Australia that says a cup of coffee, which on average costs around $4, is gonna triple to $12 per cup. That's crazy, 3 times the price. But what can we do about it? So from the supply side, as the world warms, farmers could potentially explore cultivating different varieties of coffee that suit the new environment. For example, instead of growing Arabica coffee, if the world warms another 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, potentially they can convert to growing Robusta coffee varieties instead. For those growing Robusta varieties, they could explore a variety called Liberica, which is currently grown in Southeast Asia, in countries like Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And currently, it only represents 1.5% of the world's coffee supply. How about maximizing? The second thing is about maximizing the entire life cycle of coffee grounds. Every time we brew coffee, now this is from what I got from making my espresso this morning, we are only extracting about 20% of the compounds of coffee. The rest of the good stuff is currently being thrown away. But by maximizing all this, we can turn this into different products. This can be used to make charcoal, it can be used to make facial scrubs, fertilizers, and more. By maximizing more of that coffee grounds, we can then increase the potential value and stretch it for every gram of coffee that's being produced. Now, here's a very controversial opinion. We can explore alternatives to coffee. There is a startup in Singapore called Prefer Coffee that produces a bean-free coffee. They utilize ingredients which are byproducts from food manufacturing, like soybean. They ferment it and turn that into a beverage that tastes very, very much like coffee. For the demand side of things, consumers like you and I, we're going to have to adapt to what's available. So in the future, where Arabica supply is low, we might have to accept Liberica coffee, which currently is not something that most consumers are aware of or receptive of the flavor profiles, which tend to be a little bit more smoky, chocolatey, and earthy. We might have to switch eventually, maybe reducing our coffee intake to other drinks that provide us the same amount of caffeine. So in conclusion, there's gonna be a disruption in the coffee industry, right? From the growers to the consumers to the businesses that are all surrounding this coffee ecosystem. But despite all that stress and that anxiety, I think this provides an opportunity for us to explore alternatives, to innovate, to try something new, try different types of coffee, different products. I think we have a shot at this, and if you have any ideas or comments about how we can adapt or react to coffee, please comment below. Thank you.